So you might be asking yourself, why am I looking at this thumbnail? Now, for those who aren't all that familiar, this is the thumbnail to my very first series here on YouTube, my Boston Bruins series from NHL 16. And simply put, what this video is I'm going to be looking back at NHL 16 and NHL 17. And with your help, we're going to kind of establish a Hall of Fame, so to speak, that will continue on into NHL 18 and will provide me a way to properly cap off a series rather than having it be, oh, series is over, see you in whatever the hell we do next. This way, we have the opportunity to go back and look at the best players from each series and kind of immortalize them in a way. That way, I don't have to keep saying, oh, remember this player from that series? You could just go look at our quote-unquote established Hall of Fame, and that can kind of catch you up on certain series as well. That way, I mean, I guess in a way, I mean, probably not, but I'm just saying, not realistically, but ideally, it could be, Tuki keeps mentioning this player. I guess he was important, and then without having to go back and watch the entire series, you can find out, yes, indeed, not only according to me, but according to my viewers as well, that was a pretty important player. Is it kind of gimmicky? Is it kind of stupid? Yes, it is, but like I said, I mainly want to do this as a way to provide a proper ending to a series as we head into NHL 18, and like I said, this will continue heading into NHL 18. The problem is with this, right? The voting. Can you tell I didn't script this? The voting might be a little bit, I'd say, biased or skewed, because especially here when I talk about my series from NHL 16, it is going to be difficult to remember, and people could have the tendency to kind of favor players based off of name value. And you'll see what I mean in a minute, particularly with one series. I'm not saying, and okay, put it this way. When I mention favoritism, again, can you tell I didn't script this? In the description, if you haven't already checked, there is going to be an ungodly amount of polls, because it is up to you guys who makes it in to this exclusive, prestigious Hall of Fame. It's going to be up to you guys through voting. So there may be some series that you didn't see. Hell, you don't have to vote. Or you can vote, just depending on how I kind of hype up each potential candidate. But what I'm going to do is mention the nominees. We'll have honorable mentions as well for players who I feel like didn't make the cut. And if there's somebody who you feel like I missed that isn't up for voting, mention down in the comments below. And we might do kind of a last-ditch save vote to try and get one of those guys into the quote-unquote Hall of Fame once again. But anyway, this is going to be a long video, as I'm sure you know, and I don't want you looking at this one thumbnail throughout the entire video. So let's get into this. Now, I'm not going to mention what the number is that a player has to hit to be officially inducted into the Hall of Fame. Is it 50%? No, obviously not. But is it 60%, 70%, maybe even as high as 80% to make it into the Hall of Fame? I'm not going to let you know, because I don't want there to be any bias. I don't want people to see the poll results and think, oh, for sure, this player's in, so fuck it, I just won't vote. No, I'm not telling you. I'm not telling you. You won't know until we make my final NHL 17 video, the follow-up to this, where we officially announce who made it in through the voting. Anyway, I think that just about covers it. So again, starting with the Bruins series from NHL 16. Now again, this was a very long time ago. I doubt that the majority of you have even watched this series. But as far as honorable mentions go, Anton Forsberg, a playoff hero for us in that series on numerous occasions. We had Cam Atkinson, one of our best goal scorers, the Catkinson. God, what the hell was up with that episode title? We had Mikhail Soderstrom, who started the trend of great goalie prospects in my series. And we also had Jeremy Lauzon, who was one of my better defensemen in that series. However, these players aren't good enough to make the cut, but there were two players, one who I think is a surefire guarantee, and the other, who knows? We'll find out. That surefire guarantee would be Nathan Keane, a 96 overall defenseman who flat out has been one of the best players in channel history, and without a doubt, one of the top defensemen. Again, I'd say he's pretty much a slam dunk to make it, especially if you ended up watching that series way back then. You might not remember properly, but he was an absolute gem for us. And then the other player, and this is what I was talking about in regards to name value, we have Malcolm Subban, who won a Stanley Cup. We swept the Edmonton Oilers that year in the final. And again, Soderstrom started the trend of great goalie prospects. Malcolm Subban, at least at that point in time, lived up to the hype and ended up carrying us to a cup. Now again, if you're looking at just name value, you might say, maybe not. I mean, he's not quite a 96 overall defenseman. But again, you can vote any way you want. I think Malcolm might have a tough time making it into the, again, alleged Hall of Fame. Moving on to my second series, perhaps the series I've referenced the most as time has progressed here, my Vancouver series from NHL 16. And this, again, is where name value could really help lead somebody to being voted in. But I want to start off with the honorable mentions. Again, I'm going to stumble and stammer my way through this, but that is okay. We're running out of time. NHL 18 is almost here. Honorable mentions, Danton Heinen, who was a fantastic goal scorer for us in that series, but I just couldn't put him on the list. Same as Jacob Chychrun. It's Chychrun. One of these days, I will properly pronounce his name. But Chychrun, again, a great defenseman for us in that series, but compared to others, even say a Nathan Keane from the Bruins series, I think he falls just short. Same goes for Erik Karlsson. Yes, that Erik Karlsson, who again was great for us, but we didn't have him for a tremendously long amount of time. A tremendously long amount of time. A tremendous amount of time. A tremendously long amount of time. God, unscripted videos are the best. Screw it. Brian Mahalik, 92 overall, medium franchise goalie, came along a little bit later in the series, and that is the only reason why he is not on the ballot. Austin Matthews, great for us, but not quite at that level. Oli Mata, Joel, totally Spanish, Kiviranta, who remembers him? That's more of a special kind of shout-out than him actually being decent for us. Torsten Nyquist, the backup goalie of dreams. We had great luck, compared to, the first series, we had Anton Forsberg as a great backup goalie. The second series, we had Torsten Nyquist. You also had Hendry, Melvin Doyle, Joensuu, DeRocher, who was very close to being on this list, Taylor Hall, Troy Stetcher, Colton Parayko, where my love of Colton Parayko really began. That was the Vancouver series, and Drake Caggiula as well. But we do have 5 players on the ballot. Here's the name value I was talking about. Jonathan Drouin, who was an absolute beast for us in this series. And at the time, and nominee number 2, his teammate at the time in Tampa, of course that is no longer the case, but Steven Stamkos as well is on the ballot. Both of them were tremendous for me in this series. Thatcher Demko is the third name on the list, the goaltender of dreams. He was just amazing for us. Didn't quite find the same level of success as he did in, say, rebuilding Hockeytown a year or so down the road, but in this series, he lived up to the hype 100% and led the team to quite a few Stanley Cups. Now, the last 2 players, I would say, are surefire Hall of Famers. They are guaranteed. I couldn't have a Hall of Fame on my channel without these 2 players being involved. So there might even be a little bit of voting bias and maybe some rigged voting to make sure that these 2 are in. The first one is Cedric Yasina. Who remembers me abusing the John Cena meme? Perhaps the best defenseman we have ever had in one of my series. Yes, better than Nick Hague, better than a lot of other players. Not just stat-wise, attribute-wise. He was a 99 overall defenseman at his peak. He was that damn good. And then you have perhaps the most legendary name in the history of my channel, perhaps my Joe Gattenby, so to speak. Episode 37 of the Vancouver series featured the best draft I have ever had in any of my series. An ungodly amount of top players, capped off, though, by the 21st pick, not of the first round, but of the second round. We drafted medium top six forward Esa Hall, who by the very next preseason jumped to medium elite potential and a 61 overall. After one season as the top center in the AHL, he was a 78 overall. And by his second season, or really his third season, now 20 years old, 89 overall and medium franchise potential. I'm not kidding. Go back and watch it for yourself. By the end of the series, he was a 97 overall, and again, is perhaps the most legendary forward, perhaps even the most legendary player we have had in any of my series. I will always reference him, and that will probably continue. Esa Hall, again, should be a surefire Hall of Famer. Quickly, let's talk about Nations United. Not the Swedish Nation United, the original Nations United, where we used players from outside of the traditional hockey powers, Canada, the US, Russia, Sweden, Finland, and we tried to build a winner. And spoiler alert, we failed tremendously. And because of that, there isn't a single person who is going to be inducted because of this series. We do have some somewhat honorable mentions: Anze Kopitar, Leon Draisaitl, Daniel Sprong, Roman Josi, Elvis Merzlikins, and Ludovic Weber. But nobody was at the same level. Nobody was in the same class as, say, an Esa Hall or even a Jonathan Drouin. So unfortunately, Nations United will continue to just kind of be brushed under the rug, never to be spoken of again. The last series we had for NHL 16 was with the New York Islanders. Now, much like the Manhattan Project from this year, it was a much shorter series that we began very late in the year. However, much like the Manhattan Project, we did win the Cup in the first year. So again, like I mentioned on Twitter, Buffalo fans, you might have to wait until the end of NHL 18, but it can mean good things. But anyway, in that series, we won 2 straight Cups to start the year. We nearly won a third. But the only Hall of Fame caliber player, and it's borderline. The only reason I think he might make it in is off of name value, but he was our captain for those 2 Cups, John Tavares, of course. Again, he's someone who might make it in off of name value. I just don't know if that series went long enough to properly declare someone a member of the best, but that is up to you guys. Honorable mentions: Michael Dow-Cole, Johnny Gaudreau, and Nick Leddy. Again, not quite in that same level as a Stamkos or Drouin from the Vancouver series. Next up, we move to NHL 17, and what a year it has been, and voting-wise, it should be much easier for you guys to make these decisions. We start off with the Columbus Blue Jackets / Quebec Nordiques series, my first series from NHL 17, and notable exemptions, and again, this was really tough. You had Joonas Korpisalo, our best goalie in that series, but not quite at the same elite level as others, say like a Thatcher Demko from the Vancouver series. Forwards, you had Isaac Lutzer, Pete Gerby, Jesse Puljujarvi, and Nolan Patrick just missing out. And for defense, Chuck Jaspers as well. Those 5 players, you could argue they should be on the ballot, but they're not, and we only have 2 nominees from this series. The best forward, who was Matthew Tkachuk. He dominated for us in that series. And then the best defenseman as well was Seth Jones, who I can hype up Nathan Keane, I can hype up Cedric Yasina, but Seth Jones, while he might not have been at that level, he wasn't too far off. He was great for us in that QC series. So those are the 2 names on the ballot for that particular series. Let me know if you think I got that wrong. We move on to the Bruins series from NHL 17. We revisited the Bruins team. Still not sure if I'm going to do that again in NHL 18. Maybe, maybe not. It might not be the longest series if I do. But anyway, on topic. Notable exemptions from this series: Alex Lyon, known more for a few legendary performances rather than a solid career. Tuukka Rask was our other main goalie, who we did find success with. I'm leaving that in. This is one take, baby. We're going for it. Tuukka Rask, we had success with him in that series, but again, not quite at that elite level. Forward-wise, my God, what a name. Just the names, what a list. Marchand, Bergeron, Pasternak, Austin Czarnik, Jeff Skinner, Kyle Turris, Tyler Seguin, Denis Gurianov, Nolan Patrick again, and Clayton Keller. And on defense, Dougie Hamilton, Matt Grzelcyk, Jeremy Waugh, Shea Theodore, and Joel Lampkin. However, I do only have 2 nominees from this series as well. Again, a lot of talent being left off the ballot, but I picked who I felt was the best forward and the best defenseman from this series. And best forward, it is the series where he first became a goal-scoring monster, and that would be Malte Stromwall. Again, this was his breakout performance. This was the series in which we really started to take note of just how good he was in game because of the way he was set up. Again, he was a creative player. And of course, we saw him continue to dominate in the Manhattan Project later on in the year. The best defenseman. Now, this was his best showing in any series throughout NHL 17, but you had Dennis Cholowski, who had high top 6 potential, ripped the league apart, and was a major part of those Bruins teams that competed for a championship. So those are the 2 players in the Bruins series. We move on to the St. Louis Fantasy Draft Series. Now, this was tough. Notable exemptions on defense, Adam Larson and Timothy Liljegren. But then you get into the forwards. Patrick Laine, Michael Dal Colle, John Tavares, Ryan Strome, Max Pacioretty, who might really deserve to be there, Clayton Keller as well, Klim Kostin, Denis Gurianov, and Alex Ovechkin, who we did end up winning a cup with. So some big names being left off the list. But then you get to the 6 players that are eligible. We have Jack Eichel, who was the face of the franchise, Connor McDavid, who we acquired later on. Defense, this might have been the best series for defense. Mikhail Sergachev, Drew Doughty, and Olli Juolevi. And then the hero of that franchise, probably the only reason why we had any success whatsoever, Carey Price, who we took, I believe, with the 4th overall pick or something like that. We took him with our first pick in that fantasy draft, and he lived up to the hype, no doubt about it. So again, that is another series where I'm wondering how much name value will factor in rather than people remembering just how well they actually did in that series. But again, that's what this video is mainly about. Giving me a reason to or giving me a good foundation, we'll say. And now moving on, like I've said, we'll be able to do this at the end of every series, and it will be good. It'll be a good way to end each series. Really quickly, before I forget, the Swedish Nation United. I don't think I have to tell you guys. There isn't a single nominee, and there isn't a single notable exemption. That series, talk about sweeping the original Nations United under the rug. This one, you throw it out with the bathwater. It's ruined. Goodbye. Go away. I never want to speak of you again. So we'll move on to a brighter note. Draft to Glory. Holy shit, the names on this list, guys. And again, I have a feeling the vast majority may indeed be Hall of Famers. Now, notable exemptions, Ross Winquist, who in fairness didn't quite pan out to what we wanted him to be, but he was still a very serviceable player for us. Same goes for Zontag as well. Couldn't put him on the ballot, but what a great player for us. Junior Harvey as well, another solid player for us. Alexander Belanger, figured we'd give him a mention. And Mikko Mikkola, who if we had a little bit more time, I think could have been considered Hall of Fame worthy. But he is not on the ballot. We do have quite a few names here. We'll start off with Wade Nugent Hopkins, Andrei Svechnikov, Yuri Hadobin, Ken Janes, Kim Wheating, Stephen Quirk, Nolan Patrick, our captain, and because there may have been a slight riot if I didn't put him on the list, our first captain, Chris Rumble, also eligible to be voted into our Hall of Fame. Again, what are the odds? The only ones I'm thinking might not make it are Nugent Hopkins, just because, we didn't get to see his entire career. And then maybe Wheating and James, just because of the way they left. But they were, without a doubt, the two best defensemen that we had at any point in that series. Moving on to rebuilding Hockeytown, 2 series left. And this one, this is going to take a while to sort through here. 78 episodes of rebuilding Hockeytown. So many options. And this could be the one series where people really disagree with who I have on the ballot and who I don't, which is why I'm mentioning that if there's enough of a push for why isn't this guy on the ballot, if you say you see a comment down below and it says, how could you not have this player on the list? Like that comment if you agree. And if that comment has enough support, I will gladly put it up to a vote. But anyway, notable exemptions for rebuilding Hockeytown. On defense, Matt Spencer, who of course grew 20 overall points and was going to be one of the faces of the franchise, of the series, before we ended up going down the pretty damn ridiculous path. Reece Scarlett deserves a shout out, not Hall of Fame worthy though. Rasmus Dahlin, an enigma, a goal scoring machine who just could not put up assists. Again, great player for us, an interesting player to follow, not quite Hall of Fame worthy, and same with Timothy Liljegren as well. Forwards, Chris Zeeler, Sam Boleries, Evans, Pody, McDavid, Eichel, Matthews, Mitch Wall, Magnus Lilia, Rene LeCavalier, and there are so many others that I'm not mentioning, but I just couldn't put any of them in the Hall of Fame. Not Boleries, Evans, and Zeeler, who are leading that team into the future now that we've stepped away, and could very well have been Hall of Fame worthy if we kept it going, but of course that wasn't going to happen. You get the point. And then goaltenders. We had so many elite goaltenders in this series, and to be honest, I've only put 2 of them on the ballot. Not on the ballot, Dylan Boyer, Stan Dundas, Tristan Jarry, Thatcher Demko, and Jordan Hallett. I don't know. I might be wrong, particularly maybe about Demko and Jarry. I'm not entirely sure. But with Hallett, Dundas, and Boyer, I feel confident in my pick. And a special shout out to Jukka Wirtanen for crushing my hopes and dreams, along with many other players. However, the players that are on the ballot, buckle up. There's a lot of them. Cole Lind, Taylor Hall, Owen Tippett, Nico Hischier, Harold Van Katterschen, Ian Scott, Sylvain Rouleau, Philip Hronik, and Nicholas Haig. There are only, really there's 2 that I think people might not vote in, and that's probably Hall and Scott. The only one I'm really concerned about not making it is Ian Scott, but I felt like he deserved fair enough credit. There was a time where he didn't look like he was going to be able to be the starter and and be able to take over, but he eventually did that. And we eventually won a Stanley Cup with him. So for that reason, he is on the list. But again, it is up to you guys as to whether or not he makes it. That brings us to our final series of NHL 17, The Manhattan Project. And yes, I know it sucks. It's over. I would have loved to have continued it, but we simply ran out of time. Notable exemptions. Our captain, Ryan McDonough. Big overtime goals in the playoffs, but not quite legendary, mainly due to time, but he just wasn't able to do enough, at least for me. Mika Zibanejad, he scored the cup-winning goal at the end of Season 1, but that's kind of all he really did. Matt Zuccarello was a solid player for us, no doubt about that. Subtle burp. Brady Shea and Charlie McAvoy, I think, would have been legends, but they needed more time. Jaromir Jagr's off the list, which is tough. Let me know if that's the biggest exemption. But Yogs is not on the list. And then Andre Pavlik, who just had that unreal effort, that unreal run of games in what eventually led to a Stanley Cup when Lundqvist went down to injury. Pavlik deserves a shutout, or a shutout. I think he got a couple of shutouts. He deserves a shoutout and a shutout for his efforts, but not quite Hall of Fame worthy. We have 3 nominees from the Manhattan Project. The first, you had to expect he was going to be on the ballot for this series too. Malta Stromwall, unreal goal scoring for us in that series. The goaltender, the one successful Swede, Henrik Lundqvist, is absolutely a nominee. We got him his cup in year one. And then the third nominee, because there would have been riots. Unlike Chris Rumble, where there might have been, there would have been riots if he wasn't on the list. Jesus Phillips, the one who just, more than anybody, I wanted to see how well he would progress. Looked like he could have been just a dominant force in that series for seasons to come. But again, that's the downside to starting a new series so late. However, he can still be immortalized if you guys choose to do that. And that pretty much does it for this episode. Again, there will be an ungodly amount of polls in the description below for every single nominee that I mentioned here. So you're going to vote on every single individual. Don't feel the need, if you didn't watch a series, to vote for a specific player. But if you want to, go ahead. Again, this is all for good fun, and it's primarily being used as a tool to properly wrap up my series moving forward into NHL 18. But I thought it'd be nice to take a nice trip down memory lane with NHL 16 and 17. And then at the end of NHL 18, we'll have our complete list of Hall of Famers from each series, and maybe we'll do something special for that. But definitely next year, at the end of NHL 18, with my NHL 18 wrap-up, we will be looking back at those specific players, as opposed to, players from the past 2 years worth of series. But again, guys, that'll do it. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to vote on those polls. We'll be having the follow-up video be completed fairly quickly, with NHL 18 being right around the corner. So make sure to vote quickly, and I will see you guys in the next one. It will be our final NHL 17 video. I'm looking forward to seeing the results. I will catch you guys next time.